Washington, D.C., September 25, 2025. In a high-profile meeting at the White House, U.S. President Donald Trump pressed Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan to halt the country's purchases of Russian oil, framing the issue as a test of NATO unity and a moral stand against Moscow's ongoing war in Ukraine. The bilateral talks, which blended cordial remarks with blunt demands, underscored the persistent strain in U.S.-Turkey relations. While the two leaders praised each other publicly, the discussion revealed sharp differences over energy imports, regional conflicts, and the balance between strategic partnership and national interest. The Washington summit came at a pivotal moment. Russia's full-scale war in Ukraine, now in its fourth year, has reshaped global energy markets and strained alliances. Turkey, a NATO member with deep commercial ties to both the West and Moscow, has continued importing Russian oil, a policy that frustrates Washington. Trump, opening the joint appearance in the Oval Office, made an unusually personal remark about his counterpart. Donald Trump, US President, said, "Usually I don't like opinionated people, but I've always liked this one, Recep Tayyip Erdogan. But he's a tough one, and he does an amazing job in this country. And we've had tremendous relationships, both having to do with war and having to do with trade, and I guess today we're talking about both. I'd like to have him stop buying any oil from Russia while Russia continues this rampage against Ukraine." The comment, mixing praise with a pointed demand, set the tone for the conversation. It reflected Trump's transactional style, balancing personal rapport with overt pressure to align US partners against Moscow. Washington has long urged its allies to limit or halt purchases of Russian energy, arguing that such trade fuels the Kremlin's war machine. While many European countries have reduced their dependence on Russian oil and gas, Turkey's imports remain substantial. Ankara argues that geography and economic necessity make an abrupt shift difficult. The issue is not merely economic. By continuing to buy Russian oil, Turkey provides Moscow with critical revenue, while also challenging Western-led sanctions. For the US, it undermines efforts to isolate Russia and to punish its invasion of Ukraine. During the talks, Trump reportedly framed the issue as a choice between NATO solidarity and tacit support for Russia's aggression. His public remark left no doubt that he expects Turkey to reconsider its position. President Erdogan, for his part, has historically maintained a delicate balancing act between Russia and the West. Turkey has purchased Russian natural gas and oil for decades and has collaborated with Moscow on infrastructure projects such as the Turk Stream pipeline. At the same time, Ankara has supplied Ukraine with military drones and backed its territorial integrity. While Erdogan's full response in the meeting was not broadcast, aides suggested that Turkey remains committed to its energy security and will seek to diversify sources gradually rather than abruptly sever ties with Russia. Erdogan has often portrayed his policy as pragmatic and in Turkey's national interest. The Trump-Erdogan relationship has oscillated between warm personal chemistry and sharp policy disputes. Trump's praise, "I've always liked this one, he's a tough one, doing an amazing job," reflects years of direct dealings marked by both cooperation and friction. The US and Turkey have clashed over multiple issues: Ankara's purchase of Russian-made S-400 air defense systems, US support for Kurdish forces in Syria, and differing views on Israel and Gaza. Yet the two leaders have also celebrated trade deals, coordinated counterterrorism measures, and managed crises together. Observers say this dynamic often hinges on personal rapport between the presidents. While the two men exchanged smiles in front of cameras, their substantive discussion revealed enduring policy gaps. Trump's push for an end to Russian oil imports underscores Washington's frustration over what it sees as insufficient global pressure on Moscow. Analysts note that Turkey's energy purchases provide Russia with vital financial resources at a time when Western sanctions have constrained other revenue streams. US officials have also raised concerns that such trade weakens NATO's united front and risks creating fractures within the alliance. By spotlighting the issue publicly alongside Erdogan, Trump signaled he intends to keep pressure on Ankara. For Turkey, the decision carries high stakes. The country relies on imported energy for most of its needs and has struggled with inflation and currency volatility. Cutting off Russian supplies could mean higher prices and potential economic disruption. Erdogan's government has sought to balance Western expectations with domestic imperatives. By diversifying energy imports, for example, increasing purchases from the US, Azerbaijan, and Gulf states, Turkey aims to reduce reliance on Russian fuel over time, but officials have warned that an immediate break would be costly. Beyond energy, the meeting also covered broader strategic and economic topics. Trump referenced tremendous relationships, both having to do with war and having to do with trade. A reminder that US-Turkey ties extend from defense cooperation to commerce. Turkey hosts key NATO bases and plays a pivotal role in Black Sea security, refugee management, and Middle Eastern diplomacy. For Washington, keeping Ankara aligned is crucial not only for the war in Ukraine, but also for stability in the region. The two leaders also discussed Gaza, Syria, and other flashpoints. While these issues were not the focus of Trump's public remarks, aides confirmed that regional conflicts and humanitarian concerns featured in the talks. Foreign policy experts say Trump's decision to raise the Russian oil issue so prominently reflects both domestic and geopolitical calculations. With the US presidential election season approaching, demonstrating toughness on Russia remains politically valuable. Pressuring Turkey publicly sends a signal to Moscow and reassures European allies, said a senior analyst at the Atlantic Council, but it also risks alienating Ankara if it feels cornered. Others note that Trump's praise of Erdogan alongside his demand for action reflects his characteristic style of mixing personal flattery with direct pressure, a strategy that has produced mixed results in past negotiations. Initial reaction from Ankara was measured. Turkish officials emphasized their commitment to NATO and their opposition to Russia's war in Ukraine, but reiterated that energy security remains a top priority. We share the goal of ending the war and supporting Ukraine's sovereignty, a senior Turkish diplomat told reporters off record, but we have to consider our own economic stability and the needs of our people. Local media in Turkey portrayed the meeting as both an affirmation of Ankara's importance and a sign of persistent US pressure. The exchange between Trump and Erdogan highlights a broader challenge for the West, sustaining a united front against Russia while accommodating the diverse interests of key partners. As the Ukraine war drags on, Washington's calls for tighter enforcement of sanctions and energy restrictions clash with the practical and political realities faced by countries like Turkey, India, and others that continue to trade with Moscow. The outcome of these debates could shape not only the trajectory of the conflict in Ukraine, but also the cohesion of the transatlantic alliance. The White House sought to emphasize the constructive aspects of the meeting. Officials highlighted ongoing cooperation on trade, defense, and counterterrorism, while reiterating the US position on Russian energy. For now, Erdogan's government has given no firm commitment to halt Russian oil imports, but the public call by Trump has placed the issue squarely on the bilateral agenda, adding another layer to an already complex partnership. As one veteran diplomat put it, this was Trump at his most characteristic, praising a leader he respects personally while demanding concrete concessions on a critical geopolitical issue. Donald Trump, US President. Usually I don't like opinionated people, but I've always liked this one, Recep Tayyip Erdogan. But he's a tough one, and he does an amazing job in this country. And we've had tremendous relationships, both having to do with war and having to do with trade. And I guess today we're talking about both. I'd like to have him stop buying any oil from Russia while Russia continues this rampage against Ukraine.